Okay, so this is the very first sketch that I did for the poster. This happened like literally 2 minutes after having the initial idea. The sketch itself only took 2 or 3 minutes, as you can probably tell. Basically, the original idea was to have this as like a birthday card or a birthday poster for Sonic. So you can see here he's holding a birthday cake. And this is Studiopolis zone in the background, like on the tilt. And then I was going to do some Sonic Mania style graphics around the outside. And then this pose here, I wanted Sonic to have his own pose, like a new pose, rather than using one of the originals. So I just playing with the idea here of maybe he's holding the ring and the Chaos Emeralds were around him. So yeah, just playing with ideas. And this yellow border here is from the next page, which I'll show you now. Okay, so this is the more detailed version of the sketch from the previous page. So that's the original one, took 2 minutes, and this one maybe took 10 minutes, something like that. So I've added like, these objects look more like the ones in the game, so I just took some reference photos and thought maybe how these sections could work a little better, and focusing more on the composition of the piece rather than like with this one, I just sketched it and then drew a box around it sort of thing. But with this one, I drew the border first and then tried to fit things in so I had a better idea of where they were going to go in the scene. So yeah, that's basically the image I worked off for the poster. So then the next stage was to get a ton of reference images so I can start building all the different assets in Illustrator. So this is one of the art books which I took a lot of reference from. This is basically shows the artwork and development of Sonic the Hedgehog basically from day one. So I won't show you everything now, I'll just show you the stuff that I used for the poster. But just to quickly show something really cool, this was the original version of Sonic, and these guys here were kind of concepts for the character. So which is a hell of a lot different. So I thought that was really cool. So yeah, this book is it shows you all the different variations from the early days and all different kind of poses. So these like pose sheets were very handy when I was creating my version of Sonic, you know. So when it actually came to drawing this pose of Sonic, again, I took a lot of reference images from the old classic Sonic games and Sonic Mania, and then came up with this drawing, and sketched this image, inked it, and then coloured it with Copic markers. The colours are not 100% accurate here, but it doesn't matter because this was going to get vectorized in Illustrator anyway. So this was more of just a guide, so I knew what actual pose Sonic was making, and just something I could easily trace in Illustrator. Now this hand here is actually from I think it's the Sonic Lost World pose. It's kind of a similar pose where Sonic's leaping over like whatever's in front of him, and I was struggling with his hand, so I thought, what the hell, I'll copy that. But yeah, it seemed to work well. So one of the things I wanted to kind of emulate with this poster was that during the early days of Sonic and all the classic games, the box art was very, very nice. And you can see here, this it's all in this kind of airbrush style. You probably can't see the grain so much from this camera angle, but that's that graininess and that grittiness was something I wanted to capture within my poster. So again, here we have the airbrush style going on. I used to love these, well, I still love these posters, but as a kid I would just like, this was the cover art for Sonic 3, and I would just stare at the box for it, just looking at it, and then I'd sketch it myself and just try and recreate this. So basically what I'm doing with this poster is what I was doing as a kid. Right, so now we are coming to the modern Sonic sort of stuff. So there you go, that's the pose. See the hand there? That's the hand I copied for my pose. So if I just get this sheet here. So, kind of similar poses. Obviously this is modern Sonic, but I didn't know what the hell to do with his hand, so yeah, I just ripped that off basically. So the first thing I did was to get a ton of reference images from the actual level itself. So this was me just pasting all of them into Illustrator and then building the assets in Illustrator just to start creating basically like this bank of just different items I can use within the poster. This was probably one of the longest parts of the process actually, just to build everything from scratch in Illustrator. As you can see, there's a lot of quite detailed objects within the scene. There's a lot of different flashing lights. There's a lot of different patterns going on. And this was just kind of I don't want to say tedious because it did take forever. But yeah, it's just something you have to do with a poster like this, really. And then just more building the different lights. The bumpers from the pinball machines. I think they're called bumpers anyway, the things with the stars on them. So here you can see me playing around with that airbrush effect. I think it's just in the effects panel there's a grain filter which you can add, and then it was the stippled effect which I used, I think. So I actually spent a lot of time adding this noise effects to all the objects, and then ended up not using them because I found well, I wouldn't say an easier way, but it was just a new way in Photoshop which I wanted to experiment with, and it seemed to work. Yeah, so I'll show you that. This section actually took a while. This is the city and the different buildings within it. So there's the background buildings, which is what you're looking at right now. And then there's obviously the buildings in the foreground, which they're quite detailed, all different windows and different angles and stuff. But once I had the city built, it was a lot easier to see the poster come together. You can see here I'm dropping them in. I've added a little gradient on top just to give a sense of depth, I suppose. So once I actually had a lot of objects built, I could then start creating the poster and laying down the elements. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm just positioning a lot of the stuff based on my sketch, just to see if it works, just to see what it looks like basically, and if it's a bit too busy or things are not really looking right. So next I moved into 3ds Max, because this is what I used to create the Chaos Emeralds. The emeralds themselves, there's a very specific set of angles for each one, and I wanted them all kind of rotated or in a different position. So rather than try and do that in Illustrator and try and fake it, I thought it'd just be a lot easier to build them in Max and then just trace over them in Illustrator. So here I'm just setting up an object and then modeling the Chaos Emerald. It's very easy to model these in 3D software. This is actually a 3ds Max 2010. It's like 10 years old. I started using Max when I was in university, and now I can't shake it off. I really want to use Blender, but I've gone back and forth with Blender quite a lot, but I know Max so well that I kind of can't learn the shortcuts and all the different buttons in Blender yet. It's something I've been battling with for probably 2 years now. I keep going back and forth to it, but yeah, for this exercise, because I know it so well and it's so easy to do, I just did it in Max itself. So I built one emerald and then simply just duplicated them, and here I'm just positioning them in the ring which I thought was going to be around Sonic at the time. So I'm just shifting the perspectives of them a bit and rotating them, and then once I had an image I was happy with, I then took that into Illustrator and then just traced around them quickly. I think you can get plugins which export 3D objects to Illustrator, but my 3ds Max software is so old, I don't think they actually work at the moment. And rather than testing out plugins and all that, I thought I'd just trace them because it would only take a couple of minutes anyway. And so now I'm adding lights to the scene, so I can just get some idea of the reflections and the shadows for each emerald. So again, this is something that I could copy in Illustrator then. So I'm essentially just building a reference image for the Chaos Emeralds. Again, changing the colors so they actually match the colors of the emeralds in Sonic. And then here you can see me adding the emeralds to the actual poster. So again, in 3ds Max, I use this to build just one of the Sonic's rings. And Max has, probably like all 3D software, has just quick and easy metal materials you can add to the objects, so you can get an idea of how they reflect and what they look like. So here is the sketch of Sonic I did. I scanned in and added to Illustrator, and basically all I did was trace around it using the pen tool. And this is the final vector version of Sonic. So yeah, it's basically just a trace over the sketch, and then this could be taken into Photoshop where I added the airbrush effects. So this is Sonic in Photoshop, the airbrush version. Literally all I did was open up the Illustrator file in Photoshop, so you had the vectors. So what I did then was use the magic wand tool, which is this one right here, to select an area, and then on a new layer I would use an airbrush brush from the, I think it's in the legacy section maybe. Yeah, if you click on legacy brushes down here and then go to airbrushes, and I think the one I used was airbrush grainy opaque, I think it was. I've been using a drawing tablet to do all of the airbrushing effects in Photoshop, so I'm using a Wacom Cintiq, and if you notice the cursor now, it's very circular. If I tilt my Wacom pen, you can see that it starts stretching out, and this comes in really handy when you want to start drawing in shadows and for the different formations of different parts of the body. So this is just a quick example. So all I would do is basically go around all of the edges, put in all the darks, and then I would make another layer, maybe turn the opacity down to maybe 50 or 70%, and then do another one inside just to blend in the shadows more. And then for the highlights I would literally just do the same thing but with white, maybe make the brush a little smaller, and then just start brushing in. See here, the brush is probably too small because you're getting this streakiness. So if I put that back, touch very lightly with the Wacom pen, and then turn the opacity of this down, you can kind of see the effect building up. So after just doing that layer upon layer, darks and highlights, I ended up with this, which is not too dissimilar to the airbrush effect I was going for based on the original artwork. And this was the first time that I've used this airbrush. So it was a good exercise just to do that, and I'm glad it turned out well because then I could use that in the poster itself. So the poster got to this stage and it was kind of coming together. As you can see, I've got the ring in here from Max, and a lot of the elements are put in place as per the sketch that I did. But it wasn't until I added Sonic and the Emeralds that I thought something was kind of off. I think it was probably this perspective of these emeralds and the nature of the 2D background. So basically I wanted to try some other ideas just in in case this didn't work out. So after playing about with the objects and moving them about and trying out so many positions, this was the next stage of the poster. So I've added the egg helicopter. These bumpers here were added to the center. I've done symmetrical towers in the background, and Sonic's actually moved into this behind this window pane here, because in the game, if whatever character moves behind that, they have like this shadowy effect going on. So I went from that, which I think this was just looking a bit too busy, and the composition feels a little bit off, and I just wasn't feeling it at all. So that's, after a while of playing about with the different objects, I came up with this sort of layout. So this image, well, this drawing here, this is why I decided to add Robotnik's helicopter to the poster. I really liked the sketch, and I thought something like that would work quite well with the poster. So then I added the emeralds to the poster. I didn't want to use the ring effect again, because obviously that was, I didn't think it looked right. So I decided to scatter them over the poster, and I added some Sonic's rings. So this is where I kind of got to, and I had been working on this for quite a while at this point, so I was almost ready to just say, yep, it's done. And at this stage, I was ready to take it into Photoshop and start airbrushing all the elements. But I actually left it for a couple of days just to take a break from it, really. And then looking back at it, I still wasn't 100% happy with what was in the scene. And these bumpers down here as well, they were also putting me off, because originally they would have worked if I kept the whole 3D thing going on. So the next stage then was to actually remove the bumpers from the middle here. I replaced this section with one of the giant rings, which Sonic jumps into for the special stages. And then if we look at the previous version again, there's like a kind of like a blank area here, and to me it kind of looks like there was just a gap there. There should have been something there. So I decided to add these monitors, so the lightning power up, and this one, which is obviously broken, which would be the infinity power. So in the final Illustrator version, I scaled down these bouncy things here, just so the entire scene was 2D. If I go back to this one quickly, you can see these are the originals. They kind of don't really fit in with the rest, and they kind of look like they've just been placed there on top. So I just scaled them down to fit them into the scene, and that was then ready to go into Photoshop for the airbrushing effect. So with that airbrush effect I had going on, I then decided to add that to the Illustrator version of the poster. So I brought that into Photoshop, and then with the same method of using the magic wand tool, selecting the elements and then airbrushing on top, I basically came up with this, which is this is the final version of the poster. If we just going quite deep here, the file size of this is pretty massive, so it might lag a bit. But you can see I've added the grain here around the monitors and on the lamppost, and all this was done with that same method of using the magic wand tool. Yeah, so basically I went around all of the elements, even on like these window panes here. I didn't just want them as solid colors. I've added just a hint of some lighting or shadows. Here on the emeralds, I just add a lens flare to all of the emeralds, actually, just to make them jump out a bit more. So as you can see here as well, I've added a lot of outer glows to the objects. A lot of them are subtle and some of them are obvious, like the rings are pretty obvious, and these here This box has like a kind of a darker glow around it. It just makes it jump off the page a little bit more. So all of the emeralds have the same. This light up here, even, I don't know if you can see it, but just there's a tint of an afterglow around the helicopter as well. So it's only subtle ones, but they do tend to make a difference. So yeah, there you have it. That was the process for my Sonic Mania poster. So if you're a Sonic fan, I really recommend getting this book. I think this is the first edition. I think they have a second edition now, which includes all the stuff from Sonic Mania. So I'll probably get that at some point, just for that section. So yeah, I just want to show you guys that.